CEO Stories is all about candid conversations, and sometimes we touch on deeply personal themes. Towards the end of this episode, we talk about mental health and suicide. If you or someone you know is suffering from poor mental health, check out the show notes for information on organisations offering support and guidance. The number for the National Suicide Prevention Helpline is 0800 689 5652. Hello and welcome to CEO Stories, a podcast from the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce. I'm your host, Henrietta Brearley, and in each episode, I take a journey through the story of a leading or emerging CEO from across the region. What's motivated them? How have they ended up where they are today? And today, I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Beverly Lindsay, founder of Diamond Travel. Beverly, welcome.
Hi, Henrietta. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you very much for joining me. Now, we always start by just tell us a little bit about you and your business. Give our listeners a quick bit of background for those who might not have come across you before.
Of course, yeah, my name is Beverly Lindsay, and my business is Diamond Travel. Of course, I had a life before Diamond Travel. I was a former nurse, midwife, community worker, before I accidentally started Diamond Travel. Diamond Travel was never planned.
Brilliant. I look forward to hearing more about how that came about. Now, we always start by travelling back in time, back into childhood. Now, if you were to talk to 10-year-old Beverly, what would she think about what you're doing now?
She would never, ever believe that I would be here. You know, being born in a little district in Jamaica, St. Thomas, a district called Stokesall, St. Thomas, Jamaica, and being a very, very shy, introverted person, which I still am in a way, I would never believe, the 10-year-old would never believe I would be in the UK, never mind doing I've done, doing all of what I'm doing and the other things that I've done.
And talk us through, so you started off in this little district in Jamaica. Tell us a little bit about that, about what it was like growing up there and at what point you came to the UK.
Well, I was born in this little district. I didn't fully grow up there because my parents, my mother mainly migrated to the UK when we were quite young and left us with our grandparents. My grandmother, who is a Bogle, one of our national heroes is Paul Bogle, she was very forward thinking. So soon after my mother came to the UK, started earning, sending money, she plucked us out of the country and took me into the city. She thought I had, at that young age, I had some prospect and boarded us out, myself first, and for us to go get away from that rural life and live the city life and attend a progressive school. So that lifestyle wasn't always very happy because, living with strangers, some of them were just in it for the money and some treated us really badly, my brother and myself, and some were very good. And I went to a prep school, started out, which had quite a lot of influence that maybe I'll come in later when you ask me another question. But the journey in Jamaica, it was a very mixed. There were some parts that we enjoyed. As said, some homes are very good. Learned a lot, went to good schools and learned a lot. And that had a lot to do with maybe how I've turned out today.
Sounds like a really sort of mixed start to your childhood, really, and into your first steps into your future career. And like you say, probably had a big influence on what happened next. So at what point did you then move over to Birmingham? How long ago was that?
Came to Birmingham in the early 60s as a young teenager to complete secondary school. And of course, I came here in November and it was quite cold. And I came on the weekend. And of course, those days you had to go to school as soon as you got here. So on the Monday morning we had to go to school, and it was a culture shock when I came, because when you're in Jamaica as a child, you believe that England is paved with silver and gold. You know, you weren't going to encounter dirt or anything unpleasant. And where I was living in Jamaica was pretty nice, lovely area. And we were always told that, my mother had this big house in England and so on. So, you picture that you're going to be in a mansion and you're coming to England, going to drive, a long drive up to this mansion and house and so on. So we were expecting paradise. So when they pulled up outside the house in Handsworth, my mother still lives there since 1960. Everybody was getting out of the car, and I sat comfortably in the car because, this, brick house and smoke coming out of the top. I thought it was a workplace. You're going to pick up something at work. And they said, "Aren't you coming out?" And I said, "No, I'm waiting." And then we realized that we were home. So that was a culture shock. It was okay. And, I remember my mother bought this dressing table set, had a dressing table set in those days, and this comb and brush set, to put in the room to make you feel welcome. But I was very unhappy, because when you're getting into your teens, you started making friends and holding your own thoughts and trying to be independent, and maybe even see a boy in school that you have a crush on and all that thing. The last thing you want to do is to leave your home and come to this foreign country. So it took me a long while before I would really settle.
So how did you find settling into school in England? And then, at what point did you start thinking about sort of first job and career? How did that all come about?
Well, it was a secondary school, Brooklyn College, Technical College it was called. I didn't find it wasn't difficult, because there were quite a number of us from the Caribbean, especially from Jamaica, that were there. So I really did not find it. And it wasn't segregation, but you know how they say, birds of a feather flock together. So there were enough of you there. So apart from the weather, I did not find it that hard to settle. The other thing, I think, and a lot of us that came up during that time in the 60s could relate to that maybe some of us, including myself, didn't do that well at school because we got bored, because the things that we were being taught were things that we were taught when we were in kindergarten, more or less in Jamaica. So I think a lot of us got bored and got distracted and didn't do as well.
So thinking about that next step on from school, perhaps finding it not as challenging as it should have been, and you alluded to perhaps not paying as much attention in school as a result as you could have done. So what happened next? What happened after school? How did you start your career?
My first job, I had a holiday job when I was about 16 in Woolworths. It was in Lozells, Birmingham. My friend and I had a holiday job. And after that job, the following year, I went back to school. And then when I was about 17, just over 17, they decided that I should do nursing, because, decisions were made for you. In those days, a lot of the girls were either nurses, left school and be nurses, or secretarial. So the decision was made for me to do nursing. So I got through, shipped off to this hospital in West Bromwich to start my career. But that didn't work out well, because I became pregnant, which is another story, which I will not go into. But but it was unfortunate what happened. And and that was difficult times. And those days it was frowned upon to be unmarried. And of course, when your family, they're putting all their trust and relying on you to break the barrier to become the next doctor or whatever, and that happened. So that didn't go down very well. I ran away from home and lived somewhere where I wasn't really very happy, in a little box room. My friends' family put me up in, but anyway, my mother eventually came and found me. But that didn't mean that when I got home, it's not like now, it was not accepted, and I was very unhappy during that time, because you get the saying, you bring down disgrace from the family, you bring, and yes, so it wasn't a very good time. Anyway, I had 2 children very quickly, because it's funny enough, I had this whilst I was pregnant with the first one, which, is not, yeah, I won't go into that. But the only friend I had would speak to me was another friend, was another young man from school that was really nice to me during that pregnancy, and used to take me to the movies and so on, and became your hero. You maybe think you fall in love. So few months soon after I had that other baby, I got pregnant again for this other boy who was nice to me, and ran off after I got pregnant. So there it was. I had 2 children to cope with. But maybe that was a turnaround in my life too, because I remember a lady who was living in our house. It was a big house, has a lot of rooms. So there was a lady that rented the top room. And I noticed that she was producing children, but I didn't see any man. And I thought, is that what's going to happen with me? So that was, and I said, oh no, because, in Jamaica, when I was in my formative years, you learn to be ambitious. You wanted, your goals were set high. And there I am, 2 children, more or less not planned. And, I look at that woman and I thought, am I going to be like her? So whilst I was pregnant with the second one, I started applying to do nursing. And I got through whilst I was pregnant. I bluffed my way through life, living the double life without telling them. So I didn't plan to start a family. And that's where my journey started. I didn't allow my first, maybe experience, I don't want to say misfortune, to define my life. I decided this is the time. The paternal grandparents of the first child used to help a little bit. And then when I had the second one, they decided the grandmother was going back to the Caribbean to live. And the grandfather said to me, I remember his words, he said, you're a bright young lady, and, I would like you to make something of your life. We can't help you with this other one because it's nothing to do with us, but we're going to help you with this one. So it was agreed that they would take him back to the Caribbean to help me to pursue my life, which, I was happy to see that he lived to see that the grandfather made something up, because I had diamond traveling thing before he died. But that gave me some help. And then I had to board the other child out while I pursue my career. Eventually, when he was 5, he started living back with my mother, so I could get on and have on weekends and days off and so on. But it was pretty tough in the days of my youth.
Beverly, this is already an incredible story of your resilience, and I think just a testament to your ability to get up, get going, keep moving forwards. And we haven't even got to you founding Diamond Travel yet. How did that come about? How did you go, if you were already, like you say, breaking barriers by being a single mum in that day and age, how did you then go on to found your own business?
Whilst I was doing nursing, I used to volunteer to an organization. Anyway, I went to Jamaica one summer and I just came back and gave in my notice. And they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to work for Black people. So I left nursing and I got a job to work for this organization as a senior community worker. So whilst I was in nursing as well, I used to help somebody in the travel agency at my day. Because, I like to look good and I have responsibilities. So I work all the time. I don't believe in days off or holidays. Even now, I don't take holidays. I work. So I used to help in the travel business. So whilst I was working in that other job, in end of the 70s, when Margaret Thatcher became prime minister, prior to her being a prime minister, they used to have restrictions of funds leaving the UK. So you have to report how much you're taking out and so on. So when she became prime minister, she opened up the market that people could have free movement of their funds. So the Jamaican financial institutions wanted to come to UK now to try and encourage their nationals to start looking at, start saving back and with a view to realize their 5-year plan, because when Jamaicans came, or people from the Caribbean came, most of them only came for 5 years. And of course, life changed. So they started encouraging, say, well, maybe for retirement or whatever, you might look to start saving and taking out a mortgage and so on. So they wanted to have promotional tours. So the then High Commissioner recommended them to me to assist them to set up tours all over the UK. So I started doing that alongside my job, not for money. I wasn't getting paid. It was just my Jamaican spirit, and I did it for the different ones. So when I decided to leave, they had offered me a job of one of these financial institutions, a job to be their marketing coordinator for the UK. So I was looking for an office to rent to do this job. And I started, to look somewhere because I was still living in a council flat at the bottom of Spring Hill there where Tesco is. I didn't want to go too far from where I live. So I went up to Dudley Road where my office is, and this place was there. It wasn't for sale. I went next door and I just said to him, I'm looking for somewhere to rent. I need an office to do this job. And he said, let me show you something. So he took me to this place and said, well, this is, his brother had bought the building to do some hairdressing, and he died suddenly. So the building was still, and he said it was for sale. So the long and short of it, I got the building, and I must give you the NatWest story about it, because when I saw the building, didn't have any money, never ran a business before. I called a friend and asked them, how do you start a business? And she told me that NatWest had just started this program to support, small businesses, and they had appointed a business development manager. Name was Tony Drum, and she gave me his details to go and see him, because I got this building now, and of course I only need the office upstairs. So downstairs is still, what am I going to do with downstairs? So that's how Diamond Travel came about. So I went to see this man at NatWest, and of course, he must have thought, who is this woman? Because, I didn't know much about business, but I know how to dress. And of course, Dynasty was on, and I turned up in my black and white outfit, hat, gloves, the works, and I was a size 10 those days. And he must have wondered who this woman and no money. But of course, he was intrigued maybe the way I was dressed. And so he spoke to me and he said to me, come back in 2 weeks' time. And he told me I had to go and do a business plan and a cash flow forecast. And market research. And he signposted me where to go and get help for these other things. And when I went back to him 2 weeks later, and he paid me a compliment. He said, Beverly Lindsay, from what I heard about you, because I had a reputation from the other job, if you can't make it in business, nobody else will. So he really held my hand, got me to see the bank manager, got my mortgage, even got a grant from somewhere that was giving out grant. I didn't know anything about grant, but he got me a £5,000. And that's how I started Diamond Travel. And in that same year, when I started the business, I met somebody who I thought was interested in me, but didn't know that he was a crook. And then NatWest they were telling me, the manager didn't like the look, and he was saying, don't get involved. But, single woman, your head turned, as we say in Jamaican, got involved with him, put his name on my business and everything. And in that few months later, he got me to sign some documents and thinking that, we're looking at opening another branch. And of course, not being too trusting, I signed away all the money and he took out all the money and ran off. So I had to start again. But NatWest again held my hand, restructured the business. But yes, that's how Diamond Travel started, just to occupy space downstairs for temporarily whilst I do my other job.
That is incredible, Beverly. And again, that like you were saying earlier, total accident starting the business, not something you'd planned. And then again, that piece of that resilience, that picking back up and getting back to business after that incident. What made you think travel? What was it about the travel industry that made you think, this is the one, this is what I want to do?
Well, as I said, I used to, when I was young, I did every job. I work as a barmaid, I work as, anything in between to earn extra money to, support children and keep myself in style. But yes, so I also used to work in a travel agency on days off. So I had some experience in travel, and there weren't anything around that area. Also, there was a young lady that I knew at the time that was quite experienced in travel, and she had just lost her job, so she needed a job. So with her support and my little experience, and I had enough knowledge to have some template and connections too.
So it all came together. So you've now got the business. You've had some brilliant experiences in the support from NatWest, in particular from your bank manager. You've navigated some really difficult situations with the gentleman that was defrauding your business. You've come back from it. How did you feel about developing your business? Going on to employ people, looking at how you sort of build up your customer base. How did you navigate all of those sort of initial phases of running your own business?
Building the customer base wasn't too difficult because of my popularity, being a community worker for several years in the community. They all know me. I did quite a lot of work for people over the years, even though I didn't know what I was doing. Social welfare, sorting out people's tribunal, doing things, helping people with bereavement, and of course, doing the Building Society work, the promotional tours throughout the UK. I was well known all over the UK. So people, because they were telling I should call it Beverly Lindsay Travel because my name was well known. So I had a good name that I could build upon. Recruiting people has been the greatest challenge, because I've had good staff and I've had some serious, and I've lost a lot of money. I've had big, some tens of thousands stolen from me and I have to keep bouncing back when I'm at a vulnerable state. I mean, the last one that happened, a few years ago was after my son's death. And I was really at a low, and I got somebody in that I thought I knew from a child and got them in to, to help me, because my head, and for over 2.5 years, I tell you, nearly 200,000 pounds that person took, and I didn't even find out until it was almost too late. So yeah, so that has been the people, and I find the people that have robbed me are the people that I trust.
How do you bounce back as a business owner from having that trust abused in that way? You know, how do you bounce back from that?
I tell you something. In 1997, when I had the second harm robbery, I would call it, my manager at the time called me and said, my head office asked me to give you a treat of anything you want and take somebody with you, because they said they have never seen anybody gone through what you've gone through and still survive, never mind you being a woman. But that stems from maybe my background, the blood I have running through my veins, because as one of our national heroes in Jamaica is called Paul Bogle, and I'm a descendant of that Bogle family. My grandmother is a Bogle, and maybe that resilience came from, you can read up about Paul Bogle, that maybe it's in my DNA to fight.
Tell me a little bit about how your business has evolved over the years, how it's changed, and perhaps some of the high points along the way as well that's kept you motivated to run the business.
Over the years, when we first started, it was a good business to be in. You could make a profit. It was a happy place. Airline used to give you discounted travel for yourself to travel. There were loads of farm trips. You could travel the world and stay at the most luxurious hotels for nothing or little or nothing. And it was good. And then the onset of the millennium, and of course, the introduction of internet, and everybody start becoming a travel agent. And it's been almost downhill since then. But over the years, then the different things that happen, September 11 happened, and the whole dynamic has changed, and airlines stopped giving commissions. You have to be working a very small margin, and everything, security become a pain. And then we had to, like before, a lot of our markets in Jamaica, we used to have the free travel without visa restriction, and then visa restriction. So for the independent travel, and many will tell you that it has been kind of a downhill trod over the last 20 years going down. So it's a miracle that we've survived. I was just getting over the last big theft in my office, and last year I just announced we had a nice Christmas and said to the staff, oh, things looking back like things are picking up, things are looking back to normal. And then COVID. And we thought, COVID came, we thought in a couple of months, and as you know, what's happening in the news. And even since the last few months, we thought things started looking back again, because people want to travel. And yes, and people don't even understand about the pressure on our industry, because when I listen to the news, sometimes I get very annoyed because they talk about the hospitality and so on. Yes, we are all suffering, but what you don't understand, maybe people don't understand, that we are the only industry that have to give back everything that we've earned in the last year. Because when you have to give the refund, people want the 100% refund. You worked hard a year ago, you use that money to pay your bills and do everything, and pay your staff, and we have to give back that money. Where else? So we spent, and we couldn't furlough all our staff like other people, because people have to be there to answer the phone and to process. We worked harder during this pandemic than in normal times for nothing.
I know we've spoken about the impact on your industry, and like you say, it is that double whammy of, you know, you've got to employ and pay people to do the refunds that, like you say, you'd already closed off as great job done, done what you needed to do as a travel agent. Looking ahead, what do you hope for the future of your industry and your business? You know, like we say, at the moment, as we're recording, COVID cases are rising. It is a really challenging environment, but what do you hope to see for the future?
Henrietta, I can't even tell you that. I just hope for a miracle, because it's nothing short of a miracle that will help us to survive.
It is just such an incredibly challenging time for your industry, and everything that you've worked through. You know, I only hope for you and others in your industry that we are able to get through to better, brighter times, and all of that pent-up demand for going away and travelling is finally able to be unleashed. I wonder if we could talk about another side of your life. You know, you mentioned all the way through, right from the start of your journey, getting involved in the community and being a big advocate for your community, and all sorts of different voluntary, faith-related activities have been a really core part of who you are and what you do. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that side of you, that all those different things that you're involved in, and what it is that really motivates you to do so?
You know, I'm involved, very, very, very heavily involved with the Jamaican community. Of course, I'm chair for the Association of Jamaica National. It was the institute that came out of many years ago when I started Diamond Travel, they had the Hurricane Gilbert. And I started a committee set up, asked people to raise funds to support the hurricane appeal. And that's after that we decided to set up this organization, which is still going. I wasn't always chair because those days I was too shy and didn't like to speak in public, but it is still going, and I'm the current chair. I like doing community work because better than business. I hate being a business person. I don't even class myself as a business person. You know, it's just the accidental businesswoman. I'll take that, but not a proper businesswoman. Because, you know, I'm not a corporate-minded person. And when I started business too, somebody told me that I'd never make it in business because I'm a community worker, not a business person. And that is true. But when you do voluntary work, it's just so easy. So I've been a Rotarian. I sat on Lord Mayor Charity Committee for nearly 20 years, taking 2 Lord Mayors to Jamaica who were interested in supporting sickle cell, and because Jamaica is very advanced in sickle cell treatment. I've been a school governor for too long. And various things, I was once on the community advisory board at the University of Birmingham. I've never ever put myself up for anything, but somehow, and I've always tried to shy away, but somehow, even when I'm hiding behind the shadows, somebody will come and pluck me out. And I'm the type of person, I'll never put my name forward for anything, but if you give me a job, I'll try to do it well.
Well, I think you're being very humble there by describing yourself as a good Rotarian, because as you say, you weren't just president, you were also the first African Caribbean woman to be president of the Rotary Club.
Yes, I was the first African Caribbean woman to be Rotary Club of Birmingham. And that maybe evolved into other things, because when I was president of the Rotary Club of Birmingham, I asked the then Lord Lieutenant Paul Sabathy to be one of my guest speakers. And then he asked me about this deputy lieutenant business, and I didn't even know what he was. So when he asked me, I had to go and call somebody and say, what is that? Anyway, I said, okay, because I always say I can't swim, but if you throw me into the water, I'm not going to drown. So I became deputy lieutenant. I think maybe the first Black one, I know in the West Midlands anyway, maybe the UK. And then 3 years later, we had a new Lord Lieutenant, John Crabtree. And of course, whilst I had spinal surgery 2016, 17, I had 2 because, I'm the bionic woman So, and then when whilst I was recovering, he said he wanted to see me, and I thought, oh, maybe he's going to tell me to step down because I have this spinal surgery thing. And when he told me about being Vice Lord Lieutenant of the West Midlands, I mean, you could have knocked me down, well, with less than a feather. And so I said to him straight away, this might be. I said, why me? I said, you have so many rich, posh, white people to choose from. And he said, well, I don't like public speaking, And he said, well, I want you. And so that was a shock. There'd never been a woman. I'm the first female Vice Lord Lieutenant of the West Midlands in the 500-year history. So I never even thought that a woman would be, never mind me. So I took that role on. So that was for 3 years, finished last year. And it was like, I said, life-enhancing experience. It was like I was doing a thesis, the University of Life. I learned a lot. I've experienced quite a lot. Met the Queen, met a few of the royal families, and and humbling experience like doing the Diana Awards with young children who are challenged themselves, but still making a difference and doing things to support their community. And it has allowed me to open doors for other people and to allow me to invite the lieutenants into my community who didn't know much about them.
So, and that commitment to your community, it comes out so loud and clear talking to you, just how passionate you are about this and creating opportunities for your community and widening up that understanding, that conversation about these things like the Lord Lieutenancy that people may not be aware of. But you've received quite a lot of recognition for this incredible community work. You've received an Order of Distinction by the Jamaican government, an OBE for services to business in the community in Birmingham, honorary doctorates and more. How did it feel getting that recognition for all that you do?
The first one is the Order of Distinction. Now you can, as I told you, I've been working all my life doing things for my country. And in my days when I was working, you didn't know anything about these awards, these titles. And these titles weren't given to people like me. The OD came, the one from Jamaica, Order of Distinction. It came at a very challenging time of my life in 2008, because my son took his life. And of course, I was in a state of mourning at that time. And I came home and in the July, because, still sore. So I came home from work the Friday evening and my phone rang, and it's a Jamaican number. And this man said, oh, I'm calling from the Prime Minister's office. So I said, yes, but I thought it was an Oaks call. So, and then he said, you have been awarded a national honor. And I said, why? And he started, oh, Miss Lindsay, what you've done for the country. And I still thought it was an Oaks call. I mean, it was just going on. And I said, just get off my phone. I said, I've just lost my son and I'm not in any mood for any of this nonsense. And he said, no, Miss Lindsay, no, Miss Lindsay. And he told me his name. I remember his name to this day. And the government of Jamaica. And then he started to talk about my son. And then he told me that he just lost his mother. So that's how I got this OD. This was more or less, not even anybody nominated me from here. The Prime Minister himself knew about me. The OBE, again, was another. I got the letter, that was 2011, I think, yeah. And I got the letter on the weekend, it's so funny, on a Saturday. And I don't open letters on a Saturday because I think it might be I saw it and I put it away because I don't want to open anything that's going to upset me all weekend. So I didn't open the letter until Monday. And I saw it and it said not to tell anybody. So I didn't tell anybody until when it was announced. And the honorary doctorates, those are another two that I was recovering from my second spinal surgery. And funny, somebody was here looking after me, and the first letter, it came from Aston University in November. And the young lady said, I have a young love letter for you. She never said that. And I opened and I saw it. And I said, my God. But you know what I thought? I wasn't excited or anything. You know what came into my head straight away? Gosh, I have to go and do public speaking. I have to go and address. And then the January, I got another letter from BCU saying the same thing. So I was so naive about these things. I called somebody and said, well, it must be a mistake because I'm getting one already. And they said, no, you can have two.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how your work has been recognised. And I'm not surprised because it is extensive and you've made such a difference to so many people. You mentioned your son. You know, I know you're a very public advocate for the need for more conversations about mental health and more sort of open talk around male suicide in particular as a result of what happened to your son, Sean. Is that something you'd be comfortable talking about and telling us a little bit about that?
Oh, yes, I am very comfortable about talking about it because in our community, it's a taboo. People don't talk about it. It's getting a bit better because they see suicide as a kind of, you know, I remember when Sean died, somebody came to my office and telling me, this lady, oh, his soul won't go to heaven and all this kind of thing. And it is a very taboo. I did mental health training when I was young. And even to this day, because I'm doing something with Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust, and to this day too, I think mental health is not really, it's kind of misunderstood with Black people. Sometimes they are mixed diagnosed. However, I saw mental health in that way. I did not, even up to Sean's death, I did not really associate mental health with his suicide because he did not manifest any kind of, in my opinion, mental health signs or symptoms. He had a good job. He was very bright. And in 2008, there was much talk about the relationship between mental health and suicide. But however, when Sean died, I decided to speak hopefully about the suicide and maybe looking for the hidden signs. Because I didn't want people to be going around gossiping by my son, and because I'm well known, so I spoke about it. And since then, I've tried to get the conversation open. And I remember people were whispering to me and saying, oh, Miss Lindsay, that's the way my son died, or that's the way my grandson died, or my husband died, and my father died. And I've known these people all my life. And maybe if more of us speak about it, we would maybe get a bit better understanding. And even though people that are thinking of doing so, maybe they would have a conversation. So I try to get the conversation going through my organization. We've hosted in 2019 quite a large conference with that was supported by BCU during COVID-19, where he collaborated with the trust to put on a few mental health webinars. The one we did last year, we did the first one. We had about 500 people online. It is very close to my heart because every day I hear of somebody else committed, a young person, and the problem is getting even younger, and young girls as well. And COVID-19 didn't help. For you that is left behind, it's like an incurable cancer. I'm here sitting down and my son's photograph is over there. I come down every morning and I see it. And we want people to understand that it's not a taboo. Mental health should be treated. It's another illness, should be treated just like any physical illness. Most people really, I don't think they intend to take their own lives. I don't think they really want to die. But there's this pain inside that they just want to disappear. There's sometimes no sign, and some people will always take their lives and people will not, and it will go unnoticed, because sometimes when I ask the coroner, is that normal for people like this who are successful and doing well and everything, and say it's more common that, and since then I've seen on the news all the time people who you'd never think. But the conversation has to be out there, especially among our people who think it's supposed to be hidden.
It's such an important conversation to be had, Beverly, and I think all the way through your story, there's so much resilience and turning this challenge into something good to give back to community, trying to open up that conversation, trying to encourage others to talk about suicide, to talk about mental health, to spot what signs there may be, if indeed there are any, and really sort of try and turn something that must just be unbelievably painful into a positive. And I can see that resilience right from, your sort of early start as a shy girl in Jamaica, through to starting a business as a single mum, through to bouncing back from all of those challenges along the way. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the role that resilience and also fun? Because I think, there's definitely a whole lot of humour and fun with you as well. Tell us a little bit about the role that plays in your leadership style.
Well, I say work hard and play harder. That's why I have to have new replacement, because I don't think there's another dancer like me. But you have to have balance in life. It can't be all work and no play. But I'm quite disciplined in my work and my work ethics. I was in church yesterday and the minister was telling somebody how I am a perfectionist and anything that I do, it has to be done well. And I learned a lot from my early childhood about discipline. So I had that in me. My grandmother is my first role model that I had. And I remember she had a little grocery shop, and she was a market vendor as well, and she'd get up on weekends very early to go and push her cart, about 2 miles to this market and push it back. And she was only about 4 foot something. But I remember, even for business, something about her that really stayed in my mind. And is that when we'd go to her on holidays or weekends or whatever, and she would take out a sweet or something and give to you, she would always put the money back in the till. And when she's gonna cook dinner, and she'd weigh out, if it's the rice and the flour and the cornmeal, whatever, she'd weigh them, and she'd always put the money in the till. She'd pay for them. It's her own business, her own shop. And that's a discipline that stayed with me. That maybe why I've survived 35 years nearly in the next month in business. My mother, too, when I came here, she was a hard worker. She did, 2 shifts. She worked on the buses and she did the early shift, and she come home and she did late night shift. And so, I've grown up with that kind of discipline. And the women in my family, most of them haven't had much luck with men. So my grandfather was always here with my grandmother. And so, and myself, I've not had that, so you learn that you have to work hard. And every time I get a broken heart, I want to be more successful, because I said success is the best form of revenge.
So you've mentioned your mum, your grandmother. Are there any other leaders and individuals that have inspired you throughout your career?
I always just look at the people like my grandmother. If people are my role models, because there are so many people there that you can pull some strength from, and they have some relatable experiences. But I look at the things that have really made me who I am and made me focus, is that because it's the root. If you kill the root, there's no tree. And it's the root that have made the tree.
And I have a final question for you, Beverly. You've already mentioned one fantastic piece of advice, which is success is the best form of revenge. I'm definitely going to be keeping hold of that one. But if you could offer just one piece of advice to an aspiring chief executive, what would it be?
One piece is to really believe in yourself, have more confidence in yourself. That is something I lacked. And maybe I could have had more opportunities if I did not suffer so much from this imposter syndrome. So be less of that, and not to be too trusting. Keep your eye on the ball, because the people who are the nicest to you, be careful. Sometimes they say, there's a saying, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Beverly, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being so candid and open about the challenges that you've experienced along the way, as well as the opportunities and the positives, and having that really honest take on your CEO story. To all those listening, do remember you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow us on social media at GRB Ham Chambers on Twitter and Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce on LinkedIn.